Hey everybody, it's Andy. Welcome back to my weekly show where I help you build a career you love. Today we're going to talk about the most vital areas you need to investigate before you take any new job. Specifically, these are 8 great questions that you need to ask yourself before you accept a new position. And I was inspired to give you this. I thought about this about a month ago. It was actually inspired by one of my one-on-one coaching clients, Frank. He's a senior vice president of sales. He was about to accept a new position. He called me up. He said, I'd like to have a coaching session because I want you to look at this. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Really just kind of surface the red flags. So I got to thinking as we went through his process, I thought, God, that'd be a great topic to share with my community. And then, I've got to share the story with you about Victor. Victor is one of my boot campers. I love this story. He was living in rural Pennsylvania. He had an operational position. He decided he wanted to quit in the fall. He ended up finishing it out through the end of the year. He goes on to join my job search boot camp in January, runs through the program, then decides maybe it's better that I move to a more populated city where there's more opportunities. So he grabs the networking templates that we give him as part of the boot camp. He moves to, parks his butt in Washington, D.C., starts circulating these networking templates, gets some interviews, and then has one for a chief financial officer position at a financial services company of all things. So he reaches into me and he says, hey, I've got an interview with the CEO. I'd love for you to prep me because this is really important. So we have a session. He goes into the interview. He crushes it, gets a job offer, gets a 25% pay increase. And then, a few days ago, he emails me and he says, can we have another session so that you can help me make sure that I'm thinking through this properly and I'm not missing anything. So 18 hours ago, yesterday, last night, this is the exact agenda that he and I went through, that we talked through to make sure that he was making a good decision. Now, I want to be really clear about what we're talking about today and the value of it. A couple of months ago, about 8 weeks, I did a session on how to choose the right job. Now, that session was built based on your own self-reflection, becoming self-aware, identifying your criteria and what makes you happy, and then identifying questions that you would ask an employer to determine if the employer could actually satisfy what you need. That's very, very specific to you as the individual. Today, it's going to be a blueprint that all of you should use to make sure that you are stepping back at the end. Here's what's happening. You've been through the interview process, right? It's kind of like a war. You get to the end, you know you're going to get the offer. Now think about how distracted you've become. They rearrange your thinking. There's a lot of things going on. This is very emotional. Everybody is wearing these smiles on their faces. They can't wait to hire you. This is about you stepping back and becoming sane for a minute, having some clarity and objectivity, and stepping back and saying, now I need to think this through to know exactly how long the smiles on their faces are going to last. So that's what it's going to be about. So I'm going to take you through these 8 questions. Some of them are going to be easy. Some of them are going to be a little deeper, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And so let's get into this. Now, the first one, and by the way, let me preface this by saying, some of you throughout your interviewing process will ask questions related to these things that you should be asking yourself. But I want you to make sure that if you don't feel you have the information, you should make sure that you ask it before you accept the job. The first one is on the company itself. So let's start with the company, and really the company and the market. So first thing you want to make sure that you do is you take a step back and you look at the organization. Now, you probably have already done your research even before you went into the interviews, and you've gained more insight throughout the interviewing process. Is this company a leader in its space? That's great. Or if they are a leader, will they be able to stay a leader? What are their plans to do that? If they're not the leader, do they have plans to catch the leader? Is that reasonable? Now, these kind of things and along these lines, those are very important for you to ask, right? And you want to make sure that you are comfortable with where they sit. And that's kind of obvious, and if there's lots of competition in that space, you can kind of see where they sit, where they're going in the market. But what if it's a new market? What if it's a startup organization or a small organization where there's not really a lot of competition in the local area? There could be many other factors, right? Not everybody joins large organizations. I'll give you a quick story about what I mean. About 10 years ago, so it was 2009, I was getting together for lunch with I would call him a dear friend. I would call him a business colleague. I would call him a mentor. He's mentored me. I've mentored him. But during this stage in his life, I was giving him some coaching about his career and potentially helping him with his jobs. He was working for a technology consulting company, and for a couple of years I had been talking with him about how I thought, and this is somebody I've known for a very, very long time, since I was in my early 20s. We had a great relationship, and I said, you need to take more chances in your life. You need to shake yourself up a little bit, go out and have some fun, for goodness sake. So we sit down for lunch. He says, I want to let you know, I know you've been pestering me for years. I decided I'm going to take a new job with a startup organization. I said, great, tell me about it. He said, well, there's somebody I used to work with at one of the consulting firms. He is starting to build this social media agency, kind of a consultancy around social media for businesses. And it's like 5 guys in a garage. So I'm gonna participate, and I'm gonna come in as the president, and so on. Now this is 5 guys in a garage, but it's 2009. Now, I joined Facebook, I don't know when you joined, I joined in like 2007. So the LinkedIn only came out in about 2004. So think about, as individuals, we were starting to get comfortable with social media, but businesses hadn't really gotten there yet. But one thing I did know in 2009 is that people buy what's in front of them online. And businesses had yet to tap social media and all the various platforms. This goes well beyond the Facebooks of the world, but they had yet to tap into that arm of marketing, and I knew that was going to be the wave of the future. I could process that in 10 seconds, and those 5 little words came out of my mouth as I looked at him and said, do you need any money? Because I knew that that was something that the market needed but didn't have yet. Now, there was only one other company at the time who was even thinking about doing this and doing this a little bit. So all I needed to know was, is the CEO that's going to be running this company, is he a thoroughbred? Do we have the horses to do this? What's the strategy, and so on? And he said, yes, we'll use some money. I said, I'll take it all, and we'll go call my sister, my brother-in-law, and a friend or two, and we raised some capital, and off this went, hugely thriving. So it doesn't just have to be a leader in its space, but there needs to be a number of things about the company and the market that you can assess. So it's not just as simple as, well, where do you sit? The other thing is there enough market demand? So it almost didn't even matter if there were 10 other companies doing this. The fact of the matter was, the entire planet was eventually going to need this. So if we have something, technology consulting companies, things like that, there will always be need for those types of organizations. But that's something that you got to assess initially, is where's the company sit and what does the market look like when you are joining it? All right, second thing, how about the product? How about the service? So let's think about this. Do you enjoy servicing that? Do you enjoy building that product? Is there a need in the market for that product? Is there a need? Is there demand? So much like the space that the company is in, the company might have several products, and this is where we have to kind of trickle down the little tree here. This particular product or service that you are being hired to support, doesn't matter if you're in the accounting department, you're accounting for that product. So it's still about the product itself. Is the organization building a product or offering a service that you can get behind? Are you the salesperson that's got to go pitch it? Can you get behind it with a big old smile on your face? Are you the technologist or the manufacturer or the product developer that wants to design it and put it together? Will you enjoy that? That's something you need to step back. Are they going in the right direction? Are they going to be building products that you will enjoy? So you need to make that assessment. And here I was saying about the technology consultancies that are services. There's lots of them in the world, and there will always need to be lots of them because companies will always need help with that. And then and also technology itself is a very dynamic solution, so it's constantly growing, getting better, getting cheaper, getting faster, and so on, and more creative. So do you want to be part of something that's evolving? It's another thing to think about. Then the unit that they are hiring you into, is that unit vital in the long-term success of the organization? Is it a strategic arm of the company, and will they continue to invest dollars in it? This is very, very important. Let's say you are a programmer and one of the large telecommunications companies wants to hire you, and you know COBOL programming, and they have some systems that are developed in COBOL. They're just legacy systems for them. They're not really going to build or invest those. They just need somebody to babysit them for a while. Now, your personal situation and needing a job aside, I'm just talking about the overall healthier decision here. Go in eyes wide open, knowing that that is not a unit that they are going to continue to invest in. It's very important. Or do you want to get into one of the signaling areas that is going to be the wave of the future in the next generations and all that other good stuff? So you just want to make sure, are they actually going to continue to put money into the area that you are diving into? It's incredibly important that you recognize where you're getting in the organization. Just because the company is great and just because there's a huge market for a lot of the products that they offer does not necessarily mean the unit that you are being hired into is going to be around for a long time, So that's something that you want to make sure that you are thinking about. The other thing, this one you probably asked, why is the position open? Now, this is something that you should have asked in the screen. So you want to make sure that you have an appreciation. Did somebody vacate the seat because they got promoted? Did somebody leave for a different job, a better job perhaps? Did somebody get canned? Did somebody quit because the boss is a psycho, right? I mean, this is the stuff that you need to make sure that you know. That's a fairly straightforward one. Now, this next one, number 5, I absolutely love this one. And those of you that have followed me, you know how much I love this. Are the expectations clear? Are the success metrics clear? So, for those of you that go to the Andy LaCivita School of Interrogating Employers, when it's your turn to ask questions, you know one of my favorite questions for you to ask in a job interview, it probably is my damn favorite, is if you were to offer me this job and I was to accept it, or anybody was to accept it, whoever accepts this, in a year from now, what does success look like? Specifically, what will I have accomplished, or whoever have accomplished, that you would consider a raging success? That gives you the success metrics, and you know that there's clarity behind what you're signing up for, and you know what your goals are. Now, that's kind of where I left off. I shot a whole video on that one. You can go check that out on the channel. But there is a huge difference between having clarity on what your success metrics looks like and the sanity of that metrics. I mean, is that metric actually attainable? So I'll give you a great story. We're recruiting for a startup, and startup's been in business for a few years, but roll with me on this one. And they would like their salesperson to sell $1 million in revenue in the first year, and that would take about 10 clients, 10 new clients. So I'm thinking, as could anybody who's coming into this position, has anybody ever in the history of the company ever generated $1 million in a year or gotten 10 new clients? Anybody ever in the history of the company, let alone somebody who was just starting and going from cold. So the $1 million is clear, the 10 new clients is clear, but is that actually reasonable? Where did you come up with the metric to determine that? You want that project implemented by such and such a date. What makes you think that we could get that in by such and such a date when I know it's going to take 12 months and you think it's going to take 9 months? Something like that. So you want to make sure that you have clarity, that the expectations are known and reasonable. Okay? All right. Next. How about this one? So I talked about, are they going to invest in the unit that you're going into? But what level of support in your particular little universe within the organization are they going to give you? How committed are they to your area? How committed are they to you? So let's get specific. Are you the chief marketing officer who's coming into the organization? They tell you, we want you to build out the marketing team. We need to get the engines going, and you got to build up the events and the content management and all this and that. Great. How much budget is there to hire the 7, ponies I need, the thoroughbreds to run the race with me? So is there a budget? How much time do I get to build that? Right? All of these things need to make sense. Are you the technologist that has to go in and implement a technology solution? Are they going to properly onboard you and familiarize you with their product? Are they going to pay the $12,000 for you to go take the SAN training and get certified? So, resources come in the form of people or dollars to support people, to support education, to support the tools. Are you the vice president of sales who's going to build out that sales unit and get it humming, but they're not going to give you the money to buy the Salesforce automation system that you need in order to run it effectively? So that's what I'm talking about. So how committed are they? And then here are some other things. Let's not split hairs here, but here's another thing. What is their timeline on that? So they could be committed to something. Is their timeline reasonable? So how long do I get to implement the solution? What happens if we don't make it on time? What happens if we don't make it on time? What challenges do we anticipate we are going to encounter? How are you going to react when we do encounter those? And if it does derail the timing of my ability to attain my quota, implement the solution, get the commercial real estate and mall up and filled and so on. So what happens if I encounter those? Then what? What happens if I encounter those challenges, which affects the timeline? How patient and committed are you going to be for continually paying for resources, for the effort, for the additional things that we need? There are a lot of people that say, hey, come in, we want to build this unit. And then you get in, but they're not really committed to building it. And then they're kind of just dipping their toe. And one way you can tell that is if they're not patient enough, and if they're not going to give you the time you need to actually build that, foster that, nurture it, and so on, and get it thriving. And then I want to round out with the risks. So all of you, I don't care what job you have, any major project that you work on, anything, makes no difference. Anything in the world that is project-oriented should have a risk profile and a risk plan. Now, you don't need to ask to see the whole thing, but what you need to do is make sure that they have one and you know what the top 3, 4 risks are. So here's what this looks like. Every project that you implement in anything that you do has risks associated with it. There's internal risks, but the risks I really care about are external risks, risks you cannot control, things you have absolutely no control over. So for example, you're hiring me as a technology project manager to implement the customer relationship management system that you want in by September 1st so that we can, sunset this system, cut over to that system, and start offering these new services and things for our customers. Great. There's a software company that provides that software that we're going to implement. They're in the process of building a module that we need before, July, so that we can actually implement it, test it, configure it, and so forth. What happens if they're not ready? Then what do we do? That's what I'm talking about. So you can not control what that software company gives you, but in addition to identifying the risk, you got to have a couple of things. You got to have a mitigating plan. Is there anything that is in our control that we can implement to mitigate that risk from coming to a reality? Could we offer the software vendor resources? Could we get in there and help them test it? I don't care what it is. What is it that we are going to do to try to make sure that we do not encounter that risk? Then what else do you have to have? A contingency plan. Well, do we have a backup plan? So, Mr. Prospective Employer, if we don't hit that deadline, what will you do? That's your contingency plan. Do you know what you will do? And anybody who says we'll jump off that bridge when we get to it, that's not very well thought out. That's what I'm talking about. So everything that you get involved with, this is incredibly important for you senior folks out there. Because if you are not asking about the risk plans, profiles, what they're going to do when they encounter certain things, you're not going to know how they're going to react. You're not going to know how ready they are. And what do companies do when they start realizing risks and certain things are not occurring? Somebody eventually gets held accountable. It's usually the wrong person, but that happens. So now you can step back and you can look at all 8 of those areas, regardless of your own personal needs. You need to know about the company and its market. You need to know about the product. You need to know, what was my list? Is the area strategic? Why are they hiring me? Are the expectations clear? Are they going to be investing? What's the timeline? And do they have a risk plan or approach, or are they aware of what those are if they've taken the time to do that? If you step back and you look at all that, and you kind of go through that checklist at the end, you will know if this company is for you, and you will know about the viability of it. So I hope that helps you. So like I said, use that in tandem with the other video I gave you about how to choose the right job. You identify your happiness criteria, you go through the process, you kill it, you get the offer, and then you run through this exercise to make sure that you're making a good decision. All right, so I hope that suits you. A quick 20, I love it. Get in the chat. For those of you that are here with me live, we're going to the chat. For everybody else, I'll see you next week.